Hello my beautiful friends, it's Amanda here and I'm super excited for today's video because we're going to be swatching this new palette from MAC. These have not dropped yet. This is the Power Hungry palette. This palette is part of a collection of 6 palettes that MAC is dropping on August 3rd. You will be able to find them online and in stores August 3rd. There are 6 different versions of this palette. They're called the MAC Girls palettes. I'm very thankful that MAC sent Power Hungry my way ahead of the launch so that I could review it for you guys. But there are 5 other palettes, so I'm just going to give you kind of a quick little breeze through those, and I'll try to find photos of them online. That way you can just kind of see the whole line here, but we're really going to be focusing only on the Power Hungry palette today. The Basic Bitch palette is the one that kind of leaked sneak peek first. That's what I saw on Instagram a few months back. And the Basic Bitch palette is deep tones, darker, smokier kind of colors. There's the Mischief Minx, which has warm tones. There's Rockin' Rebel, and this one has like the blues and greens in it. The Prissy Princess palette has a lot of light pinks and silvers and more kind of cool tones. Then there's the Fashion Fanatic palette, and that one has bright pop of pink. And then of course lastly we have the Power Hungry palette, and this one is very neutral. I'd say it's kind of cool tone leaning, but in general this palette is probably the most neutral of the bunch. Like I said, these palettes will launch online and in stores in the US on August 3rd. They are supposed to launch internationally later in the month of August. I don't have an exact date for that. I'll try and find out for everybody who's international, and if I can find any international launch dates, I'll put those in the description box for you. These palettes are going to retail for $39.50 US, and they will be $47.50 Canadian. The packaging is kind of a long, skinny palette. It is a heavy duty cardboard, and it does have a magnetic closure. There is a mirror inside. There is no brush or applicator of any kind. Each palette contains 8 eyeshadows of various pan sizes and varied finishes, and then 1 large pan face highlighter. All of the shades in this palette do have names. However, they're not printed on the palette. They're just on this little like piece of plastic that lays on top of the palette. So you do have to keep track of this if you want to remember the shade names. I am wearing the Power Hungry palette today, so if you want to see how I got my eye look, just stick around to the end of the video and I'll do a quick demo of the eyeshadow and the highlighter. But first, let's go ahead and get to the swatches. If you've not seen any of my swatch videos before, I always do it the same way. I'll do finger and brush swatches. The finger swatches will be on top, the brush swatches will be below, and I won't use any primer, foundation, or anything like that. For the brush swatches, I'll use my e.l.f. flat eyeshadow brush, and I'll clean off in between each shade using my Veramona color switch. Here we have the first round of swatches, and believe it or not, this is actually a swatch. This is the lightest shade in the palette. It's just like a cream colored matte, and it's called Totally Obsessed. These shades really just never show up on my skin tone, so that's nothing new. This next one is called Bling Mistress, which is funny because it's one of the few mattes in the palette. This is just a neutral light brown kind of beige color. Next we have one of my favorites. This one's called Bossing It, and it's a bronze. They describe this one as a satin, but it is quite metallic for a satin. And last we have this very pale pink shimmer. This one's called Money Mad. Here are the last 5 shades in the palette. This very pale silver is called Hot to Trot. Next we have Win Some Lose Some, which is probably one of my favorite shades in the palette. I'm wearing it all over my lids today, and it's just this beautiful kind of mauve-y brown, and it's packed with silver micro glitter. It's so pretty. This gold is called Something's Fishy. Next we have kind of a warm gray, and this one's called Dangerously Elegant. And lastly, it's kind of not picking up that great on camera, but this is the face highlighter, and it's called Give Me That. So these are the finger swatches, and these are the brush. Now that you've seen the swatches, I'm going to jump into the tutorial, and then I'll kind of round up my thoughts at the end. I'm starting off with the face highlighter. This is the shade Gimme That, and I'm sweeping that on my cheekbones. It's kind of hard to tell in the video, but in person it was really apparent that this shade was just a little bit too dark for me and a little bit too yellowy gold for my skin tone. It's not too bad, just not my favorite. Now it's time to move on to the eyes. I'm using my Too Faced Shadow Insurance. I know I always use my MAC paint pot, but I haven't unpacked from my weekend trip yet, so I don't know where it is, so Shadow Insurance it is. I'm just gonna quickly set that Shadow Insurance with the shade called Totally Obsessed for a smooth base, and then for my transition shade, I'm using this one called Bling Mistress, and I'm not really being too precise with this, just sort of sweeping it all over the outer part of my lid and up into my crease as well. I'm going to be doing a lot of blending and layering, so we don't have to be too precise with the transition. Now for the outer part of my eye, I'm going to start laying down a few layers of this shade called Dangerously Elegant, and in between each layer, I'm just going back with my blending brush and blending out the edges with no additional product on that brush, and then just adding a little bit more to create some depth. Now I'm going to use my all over lid color. I'm so excited about this shade. It's called Win Some, Lose Some. It's so pigmented, it's so pretty, and I do think that it's best applied with the finger instead of with a brush so that you really get the impact of all those little micro glitters. And I'm just going to go back with another layer of Dangerously Elegant so that I keep a kind of smokiness on the outer part of the eyes. And once again, using my transition brush with no extra product, just making sure everything is really smooth and really seamless looking. Next, I'm going to use this silvery shade called Hot to Trot on my inner corners, and I'm just using a little detail brush. You could use Fix Plus to make this more intense, but I liked it more subtle today. I'm going to take the shade Bling Mistress again onto my lower lash line, and I'm just going to smudge that all over the lower lash line. I don't want to do anything too heavy down there because I really want the focus to be on my lids. And lastly, just to finish everything off, I'm going back with Totally Obsessed and sweeping a little bit of that across the brow bone for a matte highlight. And of course, you need some mascara. I'm using the YSL The Shock Mascara. This was my first time using it, and I have to say, I was really, really impressed. I liked the brush, I liked the formula. It wasn't too wet, it wasn't too dry, and just with one coat, I was really impressed with how it looked. I gotta say, I'm so surprised by how much I enjoy this eye look because it's a lot cooler than I usually go for. I'm definitely more of a warm tones, oranges and reds kind of girl. So I'm so surprised by how much I really like this eye look. I really can't give a full review on this palette. I just received it yesterday. I'm sitting down to film this so that you can see it before it launches so that you can decide if it's something you're interested in or not. So I don't have a full review just because I haven't really used it enough. However, I do have some initial like pros and cons, things that I like about it and things that I don't like about it. So let's just get the negative comments out of the way first. There are only two things that I can really complain about with this palette. First and foremost, I hate these things. I just wish that the shade names were printed inside on the palette. I think there's plenty of room for the names to be printed in here, or even on the back. I mean, the back's completely blank. That would have been a lot better too. I just don't like having to keep track of these. Maybe that's not a big deal to you, but that's my main complaint with this palette. I also think that this highlighter is a really odd choice for this particular palette because I think these eyeshadows are really suited towards somebody with a kind of fair to light skin tone, and then they have this really yellowy gold highlighter, which I just don't think is as flattering for my fair skin. I really would have liked to see like an icy white, or, you know, a pale kind of silvery pink, or even just a really light beigey champagne. I think that's just kind of a personal opinion, but I do think that this particular highlighter is just kind of an odd choice to go with the rest of these eyeshadows. Overall, I really love this concept. I think this is so fun. I love that there's kind of something for everyone. I love the packaging. I like the size. I like that this is portable, it's really easy to use, it's easy to store, so I definitely appreciate that in a palette. In general, I think that the texture and the pigmentation of these powders is really on par with other MAC products. I think that they're very smooth, there's not a lot of chalkiness, there's no skipping or patchiness. They aren't very like boom in your face pigmented, but I do think that has to do with the fact that these are all just kind of lighter, more toned down colors. So I'm definitely happy with the quality in here. I think that this is a really accessible shade range. A lot of people are going to be comfortable with this palette in particular, and if you're somebody that likes everyday, neutral, really wearable, kind of work appropriate makeup, then I think this is the palette for you. I definitely want to try a couple of the other palettes. Mischief Minx and Fashion Fanatic definitely have caught my eye, so I'm gonna try and get my hands on those and hopefully bring you some more kind of swatch and demo videos. If you have any other questions about these palettes, definitely leave those in the comments below and I'll try my best to answer them for you. I would love to hear your thoughts. I wanna know which palette you have your eye on. And as always, thank you so much for watching and I'll see you in my next video. Bye. Let's see if my dog barks this whole time. Like usual. Is this lip color too dark? Just switching it up a little bit. Eight eyeshadows. I can count. College graduate. Spooky Mac just DM'd me on Instagram. They must know I'm talking about them right now. Probably not. Obviously I need more coffee. Let's shut up and swatch. Why so close? Always so awkward. Okay. Take two. Duh. You know,